Hello and welcome back to Techarati. We're very fortunate today to be joined by Jon Summers, who is in fact the scientific lead at Research Centres of Sweden. Jon, welcome.
Thanks very much, Tasman. Yeah, good to be here. Yeah.
It's great to meet you. You're a recognised authority on data centres and research, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about important topics in that area at the moment, like sustainability and management and all of those things. But when we had our prior conversation, you did mention edge data centers, and it seems like a sort of a point of interest and passion for you. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what they are exactly.
Yeah, there isn't a good definition for an edge data center. So let's start off with, well, what is a data center first? I mean, we discussed that, didn't we, at the beginning? And I think, most people probably realize now that there's a lot of infrastructure out there that supports our digital appetites and the services that we use on a daily basis. So, but one of the things that's happening in the paradigm of computing is that we want to store our data in big data centers, but we also want to have access to that very immediately. And there are applications where we want to be able to interact with software on a very fast turnaround. This is called latency. So bringing infrastructure closer to the end user is something that is in the realm of edge data centers. And I think one of the things that's not clear to well, some people it may be clear to, but to most is whether this is something that is going to be owned by the telecom, so these guys that provide you the mobile data access to services, or whether it's going to be provided by the likes of hyperscalers, people who provide cloud services. And I think that maybe both, maybe that's or maybe it'd be new companies that spring up that provide this infrastructure. But that is not well understood just yet. It's still early days. And I think why we like to talk about edge at the moment is that at RISE, at Research Institutes of Sweden, we're building a demonstrator, which is an interesting demonstrator to try and look at the combinations of heat reuse, because data centers generate heat. A lot of people don't realize that they do that, but they consume a lot of electricity, and that electricity just stops at the data center, and it manifests itself as heat, which we have to manage. So reusing that heat is an important part of that. So, and we're building an edge-style data center that is quiet. It runs on gas, so it could take away the issue of constraints on our power grids within urban areas where we're close to the user, and all these things. So that will be part of the talk that I will be giving at Data Center World London.
Excellent. Thank you for that little insight into your talk. I'm sure everyone will be really interested in that and to hear more at the conference. So you've spoken a little about how edge data centers are at the cutting edge. I'm just wondering how you feel about more sort of traditional data center practices. What do you think is on the way out?
That's a good question. What's on the way out? I think fixed speed, everything at fixed speed is probably on the way out. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I think a lot of the low-hanging fruits in making data centers more energy efficient has been about going to variable speed fans, because we use fans to push air around, or variable speed pumps because we have to pump liquids around, or variable speed compressors because we have to use the refrigeration cycle sometimes to manage that heat that they generate. So I think we shouldn't be building any data centers today with fixed speeds. Even the processes themselves are multiple speeds, so they change their speed according to the amount of work they have to do. And all of this is designed to be more energy efficient. So yeah, off the top of my head, that would be something that I would say is out. I'm sure there are people listening now that will say there are loads of other things that should be out of the data center, but I think definitely, maybe you will ask me the question, what should be coming into the data center these days? But so that will be my answer for the moment. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. And do you think there's a specific kind of environment that really suits this modern data center, this new kind of sustainable edge data center? Do they need to move out of cities or closer to them, to the end user?
Yeah, So, I mean, the demand from the application is to try and get to the closer to the end user, but we are in this quandary of whether, I mean, I think if you go back to 2010 when I was at a conference, you know, we were talking about green data centers, and the greenest data center is the one that you don't build. So at the end of the day, you know, building infrastructure has an environmental impact. So the question maybe we should be asking is really, you know, is the data center or are data centers actually enabling us to be more sustainable in the way we do things? Okay, there's a cost associated with the existence of the data center, an environmental cost, financial cost, but does the existence of that data center actually help us? I mean, yeah, a lot of people may be laughing at the moment because, you know, how do we use data centers today? We're streaming media, you know, and that's, you know, everybody uses all this streaming media applications, you know. Surely that can't be good, you know. I mean, maybe it was much simpler and more energy efficient just to broadcast over the airwaves as we used to do. But that doesn't match with our modern living of we want to see X and we want to see it now. We don't want to see it later, and we don't want to be dictated to what we see. So that kind of thing is really, really challenging to deal with, and that's why we have this infrastructure, and that's why it's growing fast. Yeah.
Right, that's so relevant to how we live, isn't it? And I'm thinking about the idea of data centers in one's own device. Is that a reality? Sort of every person having the equivalent of a data center in the palm of their hand in the future, do you think?
Well, I mean, what you can do with this digital infrastructure is absolutely amazing. I mean, that's we've seen that. I mean, that's why it's such a poignant moment in human history as it sort of dictates our lives in some respects. So, but the data center in the hand, yeah, what we have in our hand is extremely powerful, and no doubt 95% of the population don't really use it to its full extent. But you know, one of the things that we're trying to do is we want the device in our hand to have to last longer in terms of the way it consumes energy. So you know, everybody has this problem. I can't find where I need to go because my phone has run out of battery, yeah? Or something like that. You know, so we want to take away the compute or the energy consuming elements on the phone and put it on the digital infrastructure, the bigger digital infrastructure, the edge maybe. So remove it. So, but do people have a data center in the palm of their hand? I guess if you look at this from the point of view of what was happening in the late 60s with the man on the moon, going to the moon, etc., the amount of compute power we have in our hands is phenomenal compared to then. So, and the computers in those days were big machine rooms, you know.
Yeah, that's an excellent analogy, thank you. And let's go back to the macro then, this big physical place that we call the data center. Management of data centers must be quite complex, to say the least. How are we evolving in terms of their management, do you think?
Yes, the management of data centers is an interesting one. I mean, I think it's there's multiple aspects to this. So you have, it's a little bit siloed. It is siloed, I say, at the moment. So you have the data center, which is the facility. Everybody calls this the facility. It's the shell, if you like, that manages the power to the computes and the storage devices and the network devices. And then there's the managing of the heat. So that's all about the facility. But then you have obviously the IT infrastructure, which is again hardware inside the data center. But that's just an enabler for the software. So we need to, and there are multiple layers to this. So we manage, you know, we have to manage, at the end of the day, you have to start with the application, I guess, you know, where does it run and how do you manage it so that you can facilitate that application to, you know, to user demand, which can fluctuate, you know. So data center management is complex, as you say, and I think it happens on multiple levels. First of all, you've got the energy management and the management of the heat, and that's on the facility level. But then also you've got how you deploy the applications, the software, and that's usually in the IT domain. That's why, you know, they're very siloed, you know, so the facility guy will be saying, and I use guy in inverted commas, but forgive me for that.
We understand, that's fine.
Yes. But they will change the temperature set points to be more energy efficient, and there are guidelines for that. And then the IT guy will come in and say, gosh, it's really warm in here now. It used to be colder, it used to be cooler, I used to be able to work in here. But then maybe the IT guy will not go into the data center in the future so much, and everything is done remotely. Yeah. But there's a lot to be said about data center management, because there are so many ways of doing it. There's so many different ways of managing the heat. There's so many different ways of deploying applications in data centers, and it depends on the business requirements of the data center. You know, and there are types of data centers. There are those that are co-location, which is like a car park for people who have lots of servers. And there are data centers that are owner operators. So, you know, like the hyperscalers, they provide you with cloud services. They provide everything right down to the actual the software layer, so you can put your applications on it. But it's hugely common, and we could talk at length on this. Yeah,
I'm sure we could talk for days and weeks, and there'll be lots of opportunity at the conference also. And I know that robotics is one of the themes of Data Center World. Do you think that data centers are more vulnerable to error if robotics are used more? What do you think?
That's a really interesting question, because I think there's been an analysis done that most data center issues are usually human related. So, I mean, so, you know, if anything is as good as the human in the loop. So, I mean, robotics are run on computer programs, and let's face it, you know, nuclear power stations run on computer programs, and there's always this. I don't know what the analogy is. I don't know what the statistic is today, but in every 10,000 lines of code, you've probably still got there's one condition that is never met that could produce an error, a catastrophic error in the code. But I think most things are usually related to human error in the data centers, making a silly mistake. I mean, deployment of software that hasn't been properly tested, it causes things to fail. You know, the way that you manage the multiple feeds of power to the data center, and if you have a blackout, you know, you switch over to backup, you know, and you haven't tested that for a long time, you know, that's the data center operator's fault for not having tested that, you know. And then the applications fail, and then you know, airlines are grounded, or whatever happens next, you know, from the result of the data center failure. Yeah.
I think that's a really good illustration of how relevant they are to everyone. And thinking about the people who will be at Data Center World and the different stakeholders in the world of data center, who or what might you be interested to engage with and think about more in the discourse at the conference?
I think I will be probably waving the sustainability flag now, because I think we've had a decade of talking about energy efficiency, even though we haven't made great progress on the energy efficiency. Well, we have made good progress, but I think the problem with the compute part of it is, and this goes back to the original issue of managing a data center, is that all of that energy, all of that electrical energy that goes into a data center just stops there and is converted to heat. 99.997% of it is converted to heat. Only a small fraction of it is converted into the digital components that provide the service.
Jon, we've spoken earlier about how this is really the decade of dealing with sustainability and a plan for the future. Data center is obviously a big part of that, but how far do you think we have to go?
Well, I think we've got a long way to go, really, if you look at, you know, I mean, what we're talking about today, but there's not, I mean, the question is whether can data centers help us generically with our sustainability on a whole, not just about data centers being sustainable themselves. Can they help with sustainable living by doing things smart. You know, the word smart can be related to how data centers operate, if you like. So smart with the way we live, smart with the way we use energy. These things are useful. So I think it is really, this is a decade of sustainability, and I think data center is going to have to be a big part of that. So it's, you know, some people call it greening by ICT, and then there's the greening of ICT. So the fact that we have to make the infrastructure green, but also we use it to help us become green. And I guess green is a loosely used word, too loosely used word these days, perhaps. Yeah.
And I'm sure that will be part of the discourse at the conference. Jon, thank you so much for your insights. It's been fascinating, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tamsin. Great.